The September 11th attacks were one of the most traumatic events in our country's history, and for the families of those killed in the attacks, the trauma was and still is very personal. But some of those people have been helped over the years by a family in a place in Maine. Our Dawn Kerrigan has that story.
A steel cross stands on the lakeside altar at Camp Kieve Chapel, a rugged symbol of this camp's connection to the September 11th attacks. Henry Kennedy, whose family has run the summer camp for years, says he was with a class of kids on the ropes course that day 20 years ago when he heard the news.
We threw the ropes course, then we saw on television what was going on.
Back outside, he struggled to make sense of things.
And listened to happy kids and looking up at the blue sky and with all these kids climbing in the trees. And we just sort of, at that point, say, okay, this isn't fair that all these people in New York are getting hammered and it's so beautiful and perfect here. So how can we do something for them?
What they did was offer 9/11 survivors a refuge in Maine.
We run camps, and why don't we see if we can't get them to come up here when all of this is over with?
And a year later, they held the first 9/11 family camp, bringing in families who lost loved ones in the Twin Towers and the Pentagon, and firefighters from New York's Ladder Company 3. Henry's mother, Nancy, says they all needed Maine.
They'd been through so much grief that we all were just immediately responding to each other in love.
How's it going?
Henry Kennedy connected us with two of those campers.
Thank you.
Ms. Zaitlin, whose husband was one of the few survivors from Ladder Company 3.
It's 26 masses, so I went to a funeral every 2 weeks for a year because they don't want it happening on the same day. And when you funeral every 2 weeks, it kind of changes you, and you realize the loss of life from this tragic event.
And Jeff Stratton, a Navy officer at the Pentagon, who lost 30 fellow sailors in that attack. He says the peace and beauty of this lake helped.
And even over that first 4 or 5 days, by the end of that camp period, you could see the friendships starting to nurture. And 20 years later, you know, we're family now.
Because the family camp kept going. Almost every year since 2002, Kieve has brought them back to relax, to let kids be kids, and let adults have a break away from memories of the grief and the loss, even for a week.
When they're here, they can relax and know that they're being taken care of, and they can enjoy each other.
And they all became part of the camp. Photos from each year line this stairwell, along with other treasured memories from years of happy respite in Maine. Ladder Company 3 built the camp a new mail building, nicknamed, of course, the Firehouse. And after fire heavily damaged the home of one of the camp leaders, they made a special trip to help him rebuild. Which brings us to the cross, brought by one of the firefighters to morning chapel service right here.
And so he took this bag off and started to tell us what it was, and he just burst into tears, and he couldn't talk for a minute. Wow. You know, this great big burly guy. And so yeah, he had cut this out of one of the steel beams that was in the rubble and made a cross just for this spot.
The families and the firefighters were back at Kieve last month for another week at camp. Kids have grown over the years. Adults have grown older. Maria and Jeff say the 9/11 memories are still hard and will surely be tough this year.
You try to remember the camp experience, and it'll help you through remembering that day.
Time heals the wounds it can. Families will always have the hurt with them, but they also say this place continues to make their lives better.
It was a profound experience first year. It was profound. We were still, it brings tears to my eyes thinking about it. That's how profound it was. 20 years later. Thank you, Henry.
After all those years of camps, the families, including the Kennedys, have have become close friends. And 20 years after the tragedy that first connected them, he says the 9/11 families can keep coming to Maine as long as they want. In Don Carrigan, News Center, Maine.